Okay, so these are the two pieces that I threw last week, and I told you kind of what I did. I left them out for a little bit. We do not want them past leather hard, but we definitely want them at leather hard. If they are too soft, when you go to connect them, it'll just collapse, okay? So remember, the top piece is the only one that you should have cut through with wire cutters. That first cut is needed so that it's actually detached, but it'll probably kind of re-stick because your clay is so soft when you first cut it. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab some wire cutters and I'm gonna cut through again. You should already have that line there that it should cut through fairly easily. Okay, but this will allow it to actually come up off the bat. Okay, so I'm gonna do that. And then you should be able to pick it up. It should be fairly firm, okay? It shouldn't be wobbling all over the place, but you should still be able to push into it. So I'm gonna get rid of that bat. And then this is pretty thick. That's good because I'm gonna use some of this clay to kind of push over my seam, but I really don't want any extra clay on the inside. I am not gonna be able to get into the inside, obviously, because of how thin my top piece is, or the neck is, once I attach. So I wanna clean it up as best as I can before attaching. So I'm just gonna take my needle tool and I'm gonna get that excess little lip away. And then I would also go ahead and just kind of smooth. If you go to detach your top piece and it's just flopping all over the place, just put it back down and let it dry out a little bit more, okay? So we don't want it past leather hard, but we definitely want it to leather hard. So get that bottom lip looking pretty good. And then we are going to kind of just make sure that this is gonna fit well. Okay, so when I put that on, it is a little bit bigger, but I need that excess to kind of push over to cover my seam, so that's okay. As long as it doesn't like so big that it like fits over the top. We don't want that, obviously. So now I'm gonna go ahead and slip and score. So I'm gonna score both. Slip one. And I'm just gonna use water. I realized I didn't bring slip over here. Okay, score it really well, especially since we're already at leather hard. You really wanna make sure that it's going to stick. I'm also going to get those little crumbs out of there. Okay. Get that on there. And then I'm gonna get water. And I'm gonna stick. Okay, so make sure it's centered on there. I'm gonna push it down, and then I'm gonna use a smooth kidney to start incorporating that seam. Okay, and then I will be able to use the wheel, and I'll do a little bit of trim work to get it so that it looks like all one piece. So I'm gonna just kind of slowly, maybe, oh, not that fast, so that you can incorporate the whole thing. You can also use your finger, you can use a wooden modeling tool, whatever you need to get that seam kind of start to incorporate in. Okay, and then I'll show you, I promise this is gonna look like one piece here in a minute. And then you'll also be able to kind of alter the shape a little bit if you want to. So if you've got a bump somewhere that you don't want to bump, I'm going to show you how to kind of alter all of that. So we're going to incorporate it enough that the seam is covered. And then we can actually go ahead and start spinning. Remember, the bottom piece should be attached. You shouldn't have cut through that bottom piece. Okay, and then I'm going to take my sponge. I'm going to kind of start smoothing that seam a little bit. And then I'm going to take my ribbon tool. Okay, so I'm going to trim away So this is called trimming. So I'm gonna take my ribbon tool and I'm just gonna kind of right where that seam is, I want this to look like one piece. So I'm trimming away so that in the end, this vase looks like it's all one piece. You do have to be a little bit careful about thickness. Obviously, if it gets too thin, you're gonna put a hole through it. So be careful there. But your clay should kind of be coming off in snakes, like mine is. Okay, if you don't like the shape somewhere, you can use your ribbon tool and you can trim away the parts that you don't want. Okay, just make sure that you have the thickness to actually trim away. Okay, I know that my top piece was fairly thick, so I've got the thickness to actually be able to trim some of that clay away. Okay, and then this is another thing. If you just had a really thick piece and you're not necessarily reshaping it, you just need to get rid of some thickness, you can trim to get rid of thickness. And then I'm gonna go in with my sponge. You just wanna be careful how much water you add. If you add too much water, it could get too soft and again collapse, but mine was on the very hard side of leather hard, so I know that I can add a little bit of water to it. Okay, and then I'll stop it and you can kind of see. Okay, there's a couple spots, so those little dimples, I may just slip and score a little tiny piece of clay there, or I might just keep trimming away and see if those go away. But can you tell I threw that in two separate pieces? So that's a total cheat code to ceramics. And I could, if I wanted something that was super tall, you can just keep adding pieces. The key is using your calipers to make sure that your measurements match up and to make sure that you don't attach before leather hard, otherwise it'll collapse. If this was something that had a wider opening, I could then put my hand on the inside and make sure that the inside seam was looking good. And you can just keep stacking things up. So if you want to throw big, but you have a lot of trouble, this is a perfect technique to just make it look like you can throw really big, but I didn't. Cool? Awesome. There you go.